Yeah, okay. Just unmute and then just refresh. Takes a second.
Okay. Everyone. Hello, so nice to see you all. Hope you're staying cool on this nice summer July day. I'm Allison Maurer. I'm a librarian at the U of U at the Marriott Library. Thank you for joining us today. This event is being held in celebration of National Buffalo Soldiers Day. This day commemorates the formation of the first regular Army regiment comprising Black Americans. It was created in 1866. Congress established the first peacetime all Black American regiments in the regular US Army after the end of the Civil War. In 1992, the United States Congress passed a law designating July 28th as National Buffalo Soldiers Day, and here we are. Since then, commemorations honoring the Buffalo Soldiers have been held throughout the United States. This is the Marriott Library's first commemoration of this day. It is in partnership with the Semahadithi African American Heritage and Culture Foundation, which works to provide all of Utah with exceptional cultural and learning opportunities. This program that we're going to participate and get to hear today was created by Alice Faulkner Birch, Director of Special Events at Semahadithi, and a special hello to Alice and Robert Birch, who are attending to a family member in Georgia, and they're watching from afar online. Hi, Alice. Hi, Robert. The Buffalo Soldiers were mostly assigned to protect and patrol the newly settling frontier lands. During and after the Civil War, Army desertion rates remained high, but among Buffalo soldiers, desertion rates were very low. Buffalo soldiers were known for their dedication and commitment during engagements. Many people do not realize that Utah had Buffalo soldiers, the 10th Cavalry assigned to Fort Duchesne, and the 24th Infantry assigned to Fort Douglas. The 24th Infantry was assigned to Fort Douglas in 1896 with Lieutenant Colonel Allensworth as their chaplain. In 1898, they left Utah to fight in the Spanish-American War, where they helped take San Juan Hill. This afternoon, we're going to travel back in time to when there were several Black American owned and ran newspapers in Utah, and Chaplain Allensworth was assigned at Fort Douglas over the 24th Infantry of Buffalo Soldiers. Although we are going to kind of mix several years here today, all of the people portrayed are from Utah's history, and the speech that will be delivered was actually written by Chaplain Allensworth. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce to you William Taylor, who with his wife, Lizzie Taylor, are the owners, editors, and reporters of the Utah Plain Dealer newspaper, one of Utah's 5 Black American papers during the 1890s. William was born in 1865 to Wesley Taylor and Mary Russell He has served as Salt Lake City's deputy dog tax collector, ran for state legislature, and was the president of the Grand United Order of Odd Fellows, a Black American fraternal organization. Mr. Taylor, who is being portrayed by Eddie Thompson, will recite the poem, The Path, by Paul Laurence Dunbar, a wonderful poet. He will then introduce our esteemed guests. I turn the program over to Mr. William Taylor.
Thank you, Allison, and thank you all for joining us today. What an honor it is to be a part of this program. First, I'd like to recite a poem called The Path by Paul Laurence Dunbar. There are no beaten paths to glory's height. There are no rules to compass greatness known. Each for himself must cleave a path alone and press on his way forward in the fight. Smooth is the way to ease and calm the delight, and soft the road sloth chooseth for her own. But he who craves the flower of life full blown must struggle up in all his armor dight. What though the burden bear him sorely down and crush to dust the mountain of his pride? Oh, then, with strong heart, let him still abide, for rugged is the roadway to renown. Nor may he hope to gain the envied crown till he have thrust the looming rocks aside. And that was written in 1915 by Paul Laurence Dunbar. It is an honor to introduce the Allensworth of Fort Douglas. We are all well acquainted with great work that Lieutenant Colonel Allensworth, chaplain over the 24th Infantry of the Buffalo Soldiers, now assigned here at Fort Douglas, is doing and has already done. His lovely wife, Josephine, they have made a home away from home for our Black soldiers, and see it that music and instruction over good living are bountifully poured into the soldier's life. I, myself, have witnessed to the evening concert that wafts from the Allensworth home into the parade grounds at the fort. The soldiers' lives, the soldiers treated in repose on the lawn, and a spirit of rest and refreshment settles upon all as Josephine plays an instrument or joins her daughters, Nella and Eva, in song. The musical talent of Josephine is well known, and she has taught her daughters both to play and to sing. In addition to this, these two young girls have accepted the assignment to run the Christian Benevolent Society, which is held at Fort Chapel, and to also assist in the conducting of the Frederick Douglass Library Society, whose meetings are also held there. Both Nella and Eva are exemplary in being filled with the music their mother instilled in them, as well as the spirituality taught them by their father, which they graciously share with others in need of peace and upliftment. First, we will hear from Miss Josephine Allensworth as she shares a song with us, followed by Miss Allensworth. We will hear a song from Eva, and then Chaplain Allensworth will share how Negro soldiers fought for the flag, an original speech written by the chaplain. And to close our program today, Miss Nella will share a song. Thank you.
I am on the battlefield for my Lord. I am on the battlefield for my Lord. And I promised him that I'm gonna serve him till I die. I am on the battlefield for my Lord. Come on, sing with me now. I am on the battlefield for my Lord. I am on the battlefield for my Lord. And I promised him that I'm gonna serve him till I die. I am on the battlefield for my Lord. Come on, let's get into it now. Come on. I am on the battlefield for my Lord. I'm gonna serve you. I am on the battlefield for my Lord. What time is it? I am on the battlefield for my Lord. And I promise him that I'm gonna serve him. I am on the battlefield for my Lord. Come this far by faith, leaning on the Lord, trusting in his holy word. He never fails in the end. Oh, you can turn around. You've come this far by faith. We've come this far by faith. Leaning on the Lord, trusting in his holy word. He never failed me yet. So, can't turn around. We've come this far by faith. We come this far by faith, leaning on the Lord, trusting in His holy word. He never fails. Yeah. We cry, oh, 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 oh. Can't turn around. Ain't come this far, my faith. We come this for by faith, leaning on the Lord, trusting in His holy word. He never failed me yet. Oh, 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 oh. Can't do it. We come this far.
So if it's okay, I'd like to share with you today an essay that I wrote to the Los Angeles Times. The Negro, thoroughly tried, proves himself an ideal soldier on every field. How Negro soldiers fought for the flag. There's quite a difference between the Negro and white soldier. The elements entering into these conditions are worthy of mention. First, it should be remembered that the organizations composed of Negroes are the only purely American organizations in the Army. Other regiments may take to themselves the American name, but examine the roll and you will find them mixed as the colors of Joseph's coat: Irish, German, French, Italian, all the strands under the sun. The enlisted Negro proclaims proudly the fact that he is the only Simon pure American child of the soil for more generations than he can count. The only naturalization record in his family was written more than 40 years ago from Sumter to Appomattox. It is remarkable that when an officer is promoted out of the Negro regiment, he seeks a transfer back to it because he finds these Negroes to be the best material to develop into efficient soldiers. An officer who came from a white regiment said to the writer that the white soldiers he had handled had changed his nature. This, I am inclined to think, is not a condition that obtains now. Then a large number of the Bowery class of men were enlisted. Now the pay and other conditions are better, hence a better class of white men. Let us look at the qualifications necessary for a soldier in the Negro. Nature gave him excellent gifts of limb and constitution. The color of skin, texture of hair, solidity of cranium, and perfect teeth were his safeguards against the malignant climate of Africa. Transplanted, he bore well the semi-tropical climate of the southern states. Generations of servitude failed to impair his physical virtues, but rather enhanced them. He was proof against heat and could endure the pangs of hunger and thirst with peerless fortitude. Under slavery, he was overworked, poorly fed, partly clothed, wretchedly housed, and cruelly treated until his body grew ill-shaped. But his rapid recuperative powers have been proved by the fact that in a single generation since his escape from bondage, he has grown back into the magnificent heritage of his savage forefathers. What is more, he has developed wonderfully in mentality. Instead of the elongated head and peculiar forehead, which used to be the characteristics of his race, he has a normal head with wide apart, intelligent eyes, nose, and mouth finely chiseled, and all the lines that tell of self-control and self-respect. In addition to these new traits, he has retained the old virtues. His teeth are representative of unusually sound bones. throughout a massive body. He is so well set up that his fine torso moves on his long legs and good hips with something of the element motion of the jungle warrior. Nature gave him clear and sharp eyes for the things of nature. He has an amiable disposition, a sunny nature, and a happy-go-lucky spirit even under the most trying circumstances, indispensable attributes in a soldier. He is gentle, submissive, teachable, strongly attached to those who treat him with kindness, slow to anger, but not easily soothed when aroused. His devotion to sentiment, whether of friendship or religion, is intense. He is sentimental in the best sense. His bright fancy and romantic thoughts lead him to the enjoyment of fiction and poetry. And he had been trained in the schools. These departments of belles lettres would have been in his depth. Such a man makes an ideal soldier. Now let's get into the ideal soldier. Another element that contributes to make the Negro an ideal soldier is that he is very religious. He has heard many sermons, among them from the text, quote, "If any man will be my disciple, let him take up his cross and follow me," end quote. This appeals to the heroic. It appeals to the Negro. And he readily takes up his army cross daily to follow the flag. He is conscious of the fact that the United States demands a foot from him to every inch demanded of a white man. He accepts philosophically the inevitable and meets the demand as a good soldier who receives and obeys an order, just or unjust, and leaves the final adjustment to God, who says, quote, "Vengeance is mine, and I will repay," end quote. When it was necessary for the 24th Infantry to charge San Juan and drive the Spaniards from a position the generals had thought too strong to be attacked, it rushed forward to credit of the flag it delighted to honor. When the Rough Riders were not rough enough for their position and were hair-pressed at La Cocina, the 10th Cavalry went to their rescue. They have been and are always ready now to help their white comrades to improve their hard condition. When it came time to storm the stone fort at El Caney, the 25th Infantry was there. If the country would but consider the Negro is a man and that he can do and will do as men of other nationality, conditions being equal, as it is every time he has been called to enter the army, he has been considered an experiment. In every war the United States has fought, there have been Negro soldiers under the flag that represented to them stripes with no gleam of stars, a flag that never was fired upon or trailed in the dust by a Negro. He was in the Revolutionary War in numbers, fighting against the English. He is found everywhere in evidence of the War of 1812. After having demonstrated his valor on these fields, one would think there would be no question of his fitness. Yet in the Civil War, it was only after the fiercest possible opposition and in the midst of the doubts of all parties concerned that he was called upon to enlist and to take part in the conflict of which he was the innocent cause. General David Hunter, commanding the Department of the South, who had the courage of his convictions, was the first general officer to recognize the quality of a soldier in the Negro and to use him as such. His, General Hunter's, enlistments resulted in accepting for service under the Stars and Stripes 186,017 Negroes. Of this number, 36,847 were killed, wounded, or missing. In addition to their number under arms, 150,000 lent their ready and willing hands to the quartermasters, commissary and engineering departments. These men went to war not in obedience to the obligation of good citizenship. This they knew nothing about. They were not yet legal citizens. Their hearts were not swelling with true love of country. This, they had been taught, was none of theirs. They had no technical military knowledge and experience. but they did have a yearning for liberty and a grateful heart to appreciate a liberty-loving people. They were willing to become an animated machine to follow and do what their rescuers ordered. They were awkward in their first movements, but they soon learned to reach the point where the fighting was to be done and how to stay there with tenacious fidelity. It did not take their officers long to learn that these men were to be relied upon wholly, that they fought with stubborn bravery and under perfect discipline. One does not need to read the records of the bloody day at Nashville and Butler's description of how he guided his force among the bodies of the Black dead after the attack of New Market Heights, when the bronze faces of 548 of the colored men of his command were upturned in the sun after that gallant charge, some of them with 6 wounds, almost everyone with 2. After the horrible barbarity of the treatment of the Negroes as prisoners of war, there remained not a man in the North who did not admit the courage of these men. Slaves from birth, yet possessing the most prized qualities of free men. One writer had said, quote, "The part enacted by the Negro soldiers in the War of the Rebellion is the romance of North American history. It was midnight and noonday without a space between. From the Egyptian darkness of bondage to the lurid glare of the Civil War, from clanking chains to clanking arms, from passive submission to the cruel curse of slavery, to the brilliant aggressiveness of a free soldier, from a chattel to a person, from the shame of degradation to the glory of military exaltation, and from deep obscurity to fame and martial immortality," end quote. Now, during the Civil War, the Negro served with honor in all departments of service except the more scientific. They served in the Navy from first-class boy to first-class petty officer, and yet the Negro as a soldier is an experiment. At the close of the Civil War, a few regiments were retained in the regular establishment. Today, we have 2 of infantry and 2 of cavalry. In the various staff departments, there are now commissioned officers and privates of exceptional ability and fidelity. It is easy to account for hesitancy of a number of persons to question the valor of the Negro in antebellum days. The idea was abroad that the Negro was a natural coward. It was assumed, since such large numbers submitted to be governed by the few, that they must be cravens at heart. There was never a greater mistake. There is no longer room for argument about the courage of the Negro soldier in battle. Once it was matter fiercely argued, pro and con, a thing debated with passion, for it has been the misfortune of the Negro that everything relating to him has always been mixed up with sentiment and prejudice, kept far away from the saving salt of common sense. In some circles, the Negro is thought to be a better soldier than the white man. This idea is unfair to both. The white soldier, as a soldier, is as good as the Negro. Each have qualities superior to the other. A Negro regiment is more acceptable to certain communities after they are known than white organizations in many instances. The ordering of a Negro regiment to a garrison or post near a city results in protests sent into the War Department to revoke it. This was the case when the 24th was ordered from New Mexico to Fort Douglas, Utah. After it was there a year, the Republican paper that was against it makes this appeal for them to remain at Fort Douglas. Quote, "The act of sending the 24th Infantry to the Philippines would seem an imposition on the regiment simply because they are regulars and have no one to intercede for them at the department as have the state troops. This regiment occupied the trenches at San Juan Hill from the time of its capture at about 1 o'clock on the afternoon of the 1st until about 8 o'clock the evening of the 2nd of July, when they were relieved for a short time, having to re-enter them when the attack was made on that night. It may be that other regiments did the same and that the 24th is no more entitled to a longer stay in the United States than any other, but Where is there any other regiment in the United States or any other in the world that performs such duty as this regiment performed after the surrender? The people of Salt Lake City hope that the War Department will reconsider the present intention and the interest of humanity if for no other cause. The war with Spain was waged for the interest of humanity, yet that does not signify that we should sacrifice so noble a regiment as the 24th Infantry, end quote. In regard to the Negro as an officer, no one is fit to be an officer unless he is a soldier. It is very well to be an officer and a gentleman, but it is essential to be a soldier to be an officer. The officers from West Point are trained in the school of their soldier and are soldiers before they are officers. No man is fit to give orders unless he knows how to receive and execute them. In the ranks, the soldier learns to receive an order, hence he knows how to give one. So it has ever been a question, do Negroes make good officers? Will they take orders from their kind? Some people have been led to believe they would not. An amusing story is told of an inspector who asked a Negro soldier which he preferred, white or Negro soldiers. The soldier replied, the white officer, and afterward told it in the barracks why he so informed him. He knew what reply the inspector wanted, and being an accommodating spirit, concluded to give him what he wanted. During the Spanish-American War and Filipino insurrection, the president desired to give the Negro an opportunity to prove his loyalty and show patriotism. This called upon the same old fear, and many were the doubts. So the following was wired from Washington, D.C. to the Chicago Evening Post. Negroes as officers. When the mustering in of the new organizations under the second call is completed, the volunteer army will include between 8,000 and 10,000 Negro soldiers, and more Negro officers than ever before were in the service of the United States. Under the first volunteer call, few colored troops were offered by the states, the restriction of the call to the National Guard having a tendency to shut out the colored men. When the second call was issued, the president let it be known that he would like to have an opportunity given to Negro volunteers to enlist when new organizations were to be taken in. In response to this suggestion, 7 companies of colored troops are to be mustered in North Carolina, which, added to the 3 colored companies already in service from that state, will make a 10-company regiment of something more than 1,000 men. In Alabama, a battalion of Negro troops was taken in under the first call. 2 battalions will be accepted under the second so as to make a full colored regiment from the state. 2 battalions of Negro troops will be accepted from Virginia under the second call. There is now at Camp Algier a colored battalion from Ohio and 1 of the Massachusetts regiments, including some Negro privates. In addition to these volunteers raised under the regular levies, 4 of the so-called immune regiments, the 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th, will be composed of Negroes. In furnishing officers for these colored commands, the War Department has had a serious problem to deal with. It is the president's desire to give the Negroes a representation as officers. In the last war, when there were 91,789 Negro troops, 3-year men in the Federal Army, the officers were white men. When the proposition was made to place Negro officers over some of the colored commands now being raised, the question how the officers' mess would be arranged when there were white and colored officers in the same regiment came up. That question remains to be settled. Army experts regard the officering of Negro regiments with Negroes as an experiment which may or may not turn out well. The Negro needs to be led well, they say, to make a good fighter. And there is some doubt whether colored troops will follow one of their own race as well as they would a white officer. I'd like to talk with you now about the results of the experiment. The experiment was made and the records of a number of these officers show that a Negro can be an officer and a gentleman, as well as a man and a soldier. Aside from the Negro officers in the regular army, who now are making good, are a number in the Philippines efficient officers in the constabulary, one captain wearing a Medal of Honor. The Negro soldier asks no favors. He accepts a rigid discipline when it is just. No one need think that the Negro doesn't know when he is imposed upon because of his silence. They know and appreciate the responsibilities of their officers and are ever willing to contribute their share of mirth to lighten their burdens. Their wives have also been willing to help bear the domestic burdens of their officers' wives, especially those who are considerate of their necessity and human characteristics. As an example of the growing qualities of the Negro soldier, I close with the following record on file in the War Department in Washington, D.C. Captain F.H. Crumbly, a successful real estate agent of this city, enlisted in USA November 16, 1876, assigned to Captain T.A. Baldwin's troop, J-10th Cavalry, served 5 years. Appointed Corporal March 1877, promoted Sergeant January 1878, Company Quartermaster Sergeant and Company Clerk from May 1878 to December of 1880. Post Sergeant Major Fort Stockton, Texas, December 1880 to November 16, 1881, date of discharge. Thank you.
For the sky may turn to gray. I don't worry for the future, for I know what Jesus said. And today I'll walk beside him, for he knows what is ahead. Every step is getting brighter as the golden stairs I climb. Every bird is getting brighter. Every cloud is silver lined. There the sun is always shining. There no tear will dim the eye. At the ending of the rainbow, where the mountains touch the sky. I don't know about tomorrow. It may bring me poverty, but the one who feeds the sparrow is the one who stands by me. And the path that be my portion may be through the flame or flood. At the ending of the rainbow, where the mountains touch the sky. Many things about tomorrow I won't seem to understand, but I know it's tomorrow, and I know who holds my hand.
Today's lecture was never delivered to our knowledge as a lecture by the retired Lieutenant Colonel Allensworth. He wrote it as an article specifically for Black History Month in 1909 for the Los Angeles Daily Times. It's sort of been undiscovered for this time period until Alice Faulkner Birch found it in the newspaper. It was there alongside several other articles about Black Americans in California. Chaplain Allensworth retired in 1906 from the Army. In 1908, with Professor William Payne, Dr. William H. Peck, J.W. Palmer, and Harry Mitchell, Chaplain Allensworth started the first, and at the time, the only all-Black American town in California. Following retirement, he and his family had traveled extensively throughout the states. He desired a place where Black Americans could start a new life together outside the overly strict Jim Crow laws in the South. He selected a location in Southwest Tulare County, which had virgin soil and plentiful water, and the town name was changed the same year to Allensworth. The town and its people experienced great success. In fact, one of our attendees today grew up near Allensworth. Should you want to meet him? I got to meet him and it was very exciting. While serving in the military and during his retirement years, Chaplain Allensworth gave many speeches. He was considered one of the greatest orators of his day. One of his most popular speeches was called The Battle of Life and How to Fight It. One newspaper, the Boston Watchman, said of this lecture, it was well said of him in fighting his life battle, he has already mastered the situation. He was born an orator and so well educated that there is nothing provincial in his accent or pronunciation. The attention of the audience was won at once and the interest sustained throughout. He delivered that speech, The Battle of Life and How to Fight It, in Utah. In February of this year, that speech was delivered again after over approximately 100 years via an actor portrayal very similar to what we have done today. We have made this speech, today's speech, as well as how The Battle of Life and How to Fight It, along with other really exciting historical material related to Allensworth, available online in an exhibit at the library, exhibits.lib.utah.edu. Please check it out. Wonderful photographs. You can see pictures of Allensworth, and there's a video from a very prominent historian who did some additional research on the town of Allensworth. Chaplain Allensworth was in high demand and continued to give speeches until the day he died. He died at the age of 72 in 1914 as he was crossing the street to give a speech in Monrovia, California. He was hit by a motorcycle. If I could ask the actors to now stand so we can recognize you. Our portrayals today were Chaplain Alan Allensworth by James Holman. Please come to the front. Josephine Allensworth was portrayed by May, along with Mary. Nella Allensworth by Asia. Mary portrayed Ava Allensworth. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. And William Taylor by Eddie Thompson. Thank you for attending today's event. There are books available, library books available to browse, and you can even check them out. Even if you don't go to the U of U, we have a way for members of the public to check those books out. Please also help yourself to some light refreshments. And one other thing I failed to mention is that Semahadithi, as a nonprofit foundation, is really invested in Utah Black history. And in fact, they're working on developing a graphic novel about Buffalo soldiers in Utah. So I want to recommend that you reach out to them, that you donate. I myself am a volunteer for Semahadithi, and I also donate. It's a wonderful organization, Robert Birch, executive director, and Alice Faulkner Birch as the director of special events. Wonderful people, great organization. So thank you again for attending. Please grab some refreshments. Thank you. That was wonderful.